Hello, good evening, and good day, everybody, and welcome back to the Ask Abhijit show. Today, we discuss the world of empires, kingdoms, and what is that word? Vassals. But before we do that, let me see who all is there on the live chat. Let me greet some of you. I can see Ankita Kachap, Himanshu Rajpurohit, Meet Mistri92 from Australia, Somi from Jaipur, Avinash 3174, Komalist, Vikash PJ, good evening. Animish Bharatiya, Apex News Network from Assam. Good to see you. History Go One, Udbhav Sharma, Akuma T6N, Freedom from Outcome from Canada. Good to see you, sir. Sumit, Namaskaram. Somi Sudhir Kumar, Jai Shri Ram, Bhaskar Bandit from Jaipur. Good to see you. Meet Mistri, a real painter, minimalist maverick, Sachin Yadav, Advait Ashwani, Shankar Mahadevan, Darshan Patel, Geopolitical Dubai from Indore. Good evening. Bhaskar Bandit once again, minimalist maverick, Tanmay Deshpande, Crazy Brain, good evening. Dhairya from Jaipur, good to have you. Priyanka Javalia, good evening, ma'am. Lone Walker, hello. Soumya Datta, good evening. McLevin69, hello. Dr. Harshita P. Naidu, good evening. Real Vladimir Putin is here. Devanam Priya Priyadarshi from Odisha. Jai Jagannath. Harshalinga Utla. Okay, sorry. Neil from Odisha. Gopinath Misra, Komalist, once again. Gravity Kaha Hai, good to see you. Animish Bharatiya. Anindya Bhattacharya, hello. Pranav 581. Manisha Cardoso, namaste. Sai Nirup, namaste. Dr. Dili Nitish. Borutho Uchiha 5835. Good evening. Devik Shriyan, hello. Animesh Paul once again. Uncertainty Principle, good evening. Vikash PJ once again. Deepika Mishra, hello. Geopolitical Dubai once again. Who else do we have? History Go, yes. UUUN4M. Patamesh, Dinesh B18. Reddy, always ready. All right, good to see that. Reddy, always ready. And Bhushan Babar. And everybody else. All right, good to have you all. Author Santosh Rana is also here from Odisha. Lots of people from Odisha. Good to see that. Okay, so let's get going with some questions. I'm going to take questions about geopolitics and world affairs today. Sagar is here. Finding myself. Shrishti Sapkota is here from Siliguri. Nice place. Good to have you, ma'am. Luffy Chan from Canada. All right. So let's take some questions. I'm going to discuss geopolitics today, okay? So please don't ask questions beyond geopolitics. Today we discuss geopolitics. Next week we're going to take other topics as well. Maybe we'll do a science special or maybe a space special like people have been requesting. We can do that. So let's, what questions do we have? I'll take questions from the super chats first of all. Bhaskar Bandit says, Namaskaram, hope you're well. I'm well, I hope you're well too. Okay, what's the question? Could you outline the civil war in Sudan? Okay. Why is it geopolitically crucial? Because of its close proximity to the Suez Canal, global trade, or natural resources, or more. What's the deal? This is a topic I haven't discussed thus far, right? On this channel. The civil war in Sudan. So I could tell you, okay, let's see how it feels when I explain it this way. The civil war in Sudan is a conflict between the RSF and the Sudanese Armed Forces, SAF, the RSF and the SAF. The SAF is the government, the RSF are kind of like rebels, and they are fighting each other, and that's why we have a civil war in Sudan. And both are supported by external actors. Does it make any sense what I just explained? I threw around some words, RSF, SAF, they're fighting each other. Does it make any sense? Now let me explain it in a different way. Hopefully it makes more sense. Let's go to the map. As always, I must put the map on the screen to explain the context, okay? Let's go to the map and understand what the hell is happening here. We're discussing Sudan. So if we are in India, we go westwards, we cross the Sea of Saurashtra, we come to the Horn of Africa, and we go further west, and there we have Sudan. This nation here in the south of Sudan, we have something called South Sudan. So what is the deal with this region, this part of Africa? So, first of all, the broader context. If we look at the northern regions of Africa, these were historically occupied, colonized, whatever you want to call that. They were historically occupied and colonized by the Arabs, which because of which in the northern parts of Africa you will have primarily Islamic or Muslim populations. The southern parts of Africa, below the Sahel region, south of the Sahel region, you typically have more people who are converted to Christianity by the European occupiers who occupied Africa in the 18th, 19th, and 20th centuries, and so on. So, the further south you go, the more people you will find who are converted to Christianity. Overall, very few people are left in Africa who still follow the ancient African religions. It's mostly Islam and Christianity. Northern parts of Africa, you have Islam, primarily Islam. In southern parts of Africa, you primarily have Christianity. The dividing line is kind of the division, the color division here. The desert versus the green parts. Kind of roughly, kind of like that. Now, when it comes to Sudan, okay, now that we understand that, let's understand the demographics of the nation of Sudan. The northern part of Sudan is primarily Islamic, primarily Muslim populations. The southern part of Sudan, it's primarily non-Muslim. I would say about 50-60% Christians, and the rest would practice indigenous African religions, right? Now, you can see that the capital city of Sudan, Khartoum, is in the northern, kind of in the northern half of Sudan. If we forget that South Sudan is a different entity today, and if we see Sudan and South Sudan as one single entity like it used to be, then you will see that Khartoum is in the north, and because of that, it's primarily Islamic. Okay. Now, so Sudan was ruled by the Ottomans, by the Arabs, and so on. From the 19th century onwards, it was ruled by the British, the Egyptians as well. And in the 20th century, until which year was it? It was, I think, the year of the Suez Crisis, 56, was it? Probably around 1956. Until that time, you had the Egyptians and British jointly ruling Sudan. All right? Now, when Sudan became independent, most likely in 1956, you can look up the exact date, the exact year, I mean. So when Sudan became independent, there was this conflict about who's going to rule Sudan. Is Sudan going to be an Islamic nation? Is it going to be a secular nation? And obviously, the people in the north, they wanted Sudan to be an Islamic nation. So the government that took over in Khartoum, in northern Sudan, they imposed Sharia law on Sudan. And because of that, you had mass protests and revolts and whatnot in the south, because they did not want to be under Sharia law. And that's why you had civil war-like situations. And the government of Sudan, which was based out of the northern part, out of Khartoum, they used all kinds of nasty tactics to retain power. So that was the situation in the 1950s all the way to the 1980s, civil war and lots of atrocities and whatnot. In the 1980s and there onwards, a set of militias were empowered by the government to oppress the people who did not want Islamic rule and so on. And these militias were called the Janjaweed militias. Janjaweed. I don't know what it means, whatever it means. Janjaweed. And they carried out all kinds of horrific atrocities on the people of southern and even western Sudan. The Darfur region of Sudan, which is in the western part of Sudan. So eventually South Sudan seceded from Sudan. You can look up which year it happened. Okay. But that's what happens. And then whatever is left of Sudan, you still have a southern part in which you have primarily non-Muslim people. So in the 21st century, from 2002, 2003 onwards, maybe 2005 onwards, whichever year it is, there is a terrible conflict in Darfur in southern Sudan, in which these so-called Arabic militias called the Janjaweed that I mentioned, they committed all kinds of horrific atrocities, massacres, genocide, whatever, on the people who did not want to be under Islamic rule. Maybe a couple of million people would have died, civilians mainly. Okay, so that has been the situation. Now, fast forward to the 2010s. So the Janjaweed, these people who identify as Arabs, they are now transformed into something called the RSF, Rapid Support Force, which is a paramilitary force which is in alliance with the Sudanese Armed Forces, the SAF. Now you understand SAF and RSF. So the RSF is the rebranded Janjaweed militias consolidated together, and they are kind of like an auxiliary force at this point in time, 2010s early. They are kind of an auxiliary force to the Sudanese armed forces. But then these two sides become competitors eventually. Now in 2019, the president of Sudan, his name was Bashir, whatever his name was, he was ousted by the Sudanese armed forces. And I'm not sure who's ruling Sudan right now. Must be some general of some kind. Okay, it doesn't matter who's ruling it. It's the and then what you have is that there is a conflict between the RSF and the Sudanese armed forces. In 2019, 2020, maybe 23, around that time, there were talks to integrate uh, the two forces, the RSF and the SAF, into one single integrated unit. But there were too many differences and there were too many competing agendas, so it did not work out. And today, the civil war in Sudan is a civil war between the Sudanese armed forces and the rapid support forces. Now, it is alleged that the Sudanese armed forces are supported by certain external actors, and the RSF are also supported by certain external actors. And who is caught in between? It is the innocent civilians. There is a horrific humanitarian crisis in Sudan. Now, why would external actors support the SAF or the RSF? Why? And since 2023, there's been this back and forth kind of battles going on. The lines on the map are, like Pink Floyd would say, they moved from side to side, that sort of thing. That sometimes Khartoum is in the hands of the RSF, sometimes it's in the hands of the SAF, that sort of thing. It's going on back and forth. But why would external actors, why would they support one of the two forces in Sudan? Well, the thing about Africa, the fantastic thing about Africa, is that it is so rich in natural resources, mineral wealth. If you talk about Sudan, what sort of mineral wealth does it have? The golden metal, gold. There's plenty of gold in Sudan. And whoever controls the land of Sudan gets to extract the gold. So it is alleged that the Sudanese armed forces, the SAF, it is alleged that they are supported by the United States and somebody else. And it is alleged that the RSF is supported by allegedly Russia and allegedly some specific Gulf nation, allegedly. Okay, that's what is being said about this. So the RSF today is said to be slightly more secular than the SAF. The Sudanese armed forces are purely Islamist, and the RSF are more rapid support forces are more pragmatic. But whatever it is, both are overall, you could say, they will bring Sharia law if they take power. That's essentially the situation. So that is the civil war in Sudan. Now, I hope it makes sense once I have put the entire history in perspective. Okay. And it's all about control of resources in the nation, in Sudan. But that's the deal in Africa. These African nations are sadly, tragically, today dirt poor because of the couple of past centuries of foreign occupation and destruction. So these nations are dirt poor, but they are tremendously wealthy in natural resources. And that's what external actors want. And that's why they support either militias or they support dictatorships. So you pay the dictator a certain amount of money every year. You give them some prestigious whatever thing, some honors or whatever. That sort of thing. And then if you do that, then they will be happy to sell out their country parcel by parcel to you. That's how it goes. So that is the deal. And of course, it is kind of the nation is kind of close to the Suez Canal, but it's not about the Suez Canal. It's about the natural resources that Sudan has. So who would like it? Everybody would want it. The US would want it. The Russians would want it. Maybe the Chinese would want it. But who are the players involved? It is alleged that it's the Americans on one side and the Russians on another side, and other actors also may or may not be involved, allegedly. That is the deal about the civil war that's going on in Sudan. It is a horrific humanitarian situation, tragic, and it's going on. And we don't know what the outcome is going to be. Right? That's the deal. Okay. Hope that explains it. WBR says, in the Operation Spiderweb, why did Ukraine avoid attacking the most modern Tupolev 160 bomber? Your opinion on Trump's latest peace deal seen as a surrender of Ukraine to Russia? Okay, look, did Ukraine avoid attacking the most modern bomber? So they attacked two um, military installations. One was, if I recall correctly, it's been a while now. Uh, One was a naval installation somewhere, and there was one air base in which many Russian strategic bombers were damaged or destroyed. We don't know the exact numbers. The Ukrainians claimed 20 plus. The Russians said less. Whatever it is, I'm not sure what kind of bombers were destroyed. Was it the Tupolev? The Tupolev 160 is what? Is it the Bear? Let me just check out very quickly. Or is it the Swan, the White Swan? There is the Bear, there's the White Swan. I think the Tupolev 160 would be the White Swan, right? Let me see. TU 160. Is this the White Swan? It is the White Swan. Is this the White Swan? Is it the White Swan? Tupolev 160. Yeah, it's called the White Swan. Yes, 160. And Tupolev Bear. Tupolev 95. I think these are the ones. Tupolev 95 with the counter rotating propellers. Probably these are some of the bombers that were damaged or slash destroyed. Why did they do this instead of that? I am not really sure. I don't know which kind of bombers were targeted. Maybe the more modern ones are kept somewhere else. Maybe you can't hit everything that you want to, right? You have limited resources. You have limited points of ingress into Russia. You have limited, you know, actors who are positioned inside Russian territory. So you can't hit everything you want. I mean, why didn't they hit Moscow also? You could ask. So they hit whatever they could. And it was definitely a pretty spectacular operation and a significant success for Ukraine. And it was kind of a major embarrassment for Russia, not to mention a military setback. Right. So that's the deal. I don't really have an answer. It's maybe they did not have the resources in position to attack the Tupolev 160s. Trump's latest peace deal, surrender of Ukraine to Russia? No, it's pragmatic. Look, I'm not sure what news you people watch. I have been saying since February 2022 that Russia is winning. And I have been ridiculed, right? Lots of people have made fun of me that Russia is losing. They've lost 7 million soldiers. They've lost this, they've lost that. Putin has cancer. Putin is dying in 3 months. All kinds of propaganda. I have been steadfast in what I have been saying. Russia is going to achieve its military and political objectives in the Ukraine conflict. Now, where are we? This is the Trump's peace deal, right? Is he actually surrendering Ukraine to Russia? He's not surrendering the whole of Ukraine to Russia. What he is proposing is that Russia gets to keep whatever territories it has captured from Ukraine and the whole of the Luhansk, Donetsk oblasts, and there is a ceasefire line that will be drawn based on more or less current locations, current positions on the map of the armed forces. And furthermore, Ukraine gives an assurance as part of Trump's deal that it will never become a part of NATO, and probably more. So, is this a surrender? No, it is a recognition of the facts on the ground. I don't know what news sources you read from. Maybe these are Western news sources you read from, you are observing, which is why you get the impression that Ukraine was winning all the time. And how come Trump is surrendering everything? He's surrendering nothing. He's simply recognizing the realities, the ground realities. The longer this goes on, the more the West will be drained, especially Europe. It's better to freeze the conflict where it is right now, create a North Korea, South Korea kind of situation. Ukraine gets partitioned. Like I've been saying since February 2022, Ukraine will be partitioned. Which line? Well, if Trump's current proposal is accepted, then the current battle lines, that will be the ceasefire line. That will be the partition line. If that is not accepted by Zelensky and by the European vassals of the US, well, then maybe the Dnieper River eventually becomes the ceasefire line, which means Russia goes further west. Maybe there's a regime change in Kiev, which anyway may happen if Trump's peace deal or proposal goes forward. right? So that's how I see it. It's not a surrender. It's simply a recognition of the ground realities. But Russia is winning. The West has been propagandizing all over the place, on social media, on think tank articles, and BBC, CNN, Fox, Deutsche, whatever. Everywhere they have been propagandizing that Russia is losing badly, Ukraine is winning. Yeah, right. So it's simply a recognition of the ground realities. Ritik Pawar says, why do people around the West respect Russians? Is it really due to the Second World War victory of Russia, or is there another specific reason? Oh, that's a good question. The people around the world respect Russians, yeah, but people in the West, they don't like Russia. Many of the people in the West kind of hate Russia. They see Russia as an enemy, but they respect Russia. Now, do you understand a little bit of context? You may dislike them, but you respect them. Now, where does respect come from? Does it come from admiration? Respect doesn't necessarily come from admiration, especially when you dislike the nation. You dislike the nation, but you respect them. So it's not admiration that's bringing out the respect. It is fear. At the basis of a lot of respect, especially in geopolitics, there is fear. Now, why is Russia feared? Because Russia won't crumble. Russia goes after its enemies. Russia goes after the traitors who betray Russia. Have you heard of polonium? Have you heard of the Litvinenko case? And many other instances. Russia goes after its traitors. Russia ensures that justice is done. Justice to the nation. Justice to Rossiya Matoshka, Mother Russia. Right? Beyond that, Russia was in a shambles 25 years ago. And today, look at Russia. It has climbed back on its feet. It's resolute. It has a fearsome military. It has the world's largest nuclear arsenal. It may not have the most prestigious aircraft carrier capabilities in the world, but that doesn't matter. It has some of the deadliest nuclear submarines in the world. Why is Russia respected? Because Russia doesn't take nonsense from anyone. Yeah, and nobody can bully Russia. That's why Russia is respected. Russia doesn't want to play the good boy. Please like me, sir. Sir, please like me. Yeah, that's why Russia is respected. Now ask yourself about some other country, maybe whatever your favorite country is it respected? If it is not, then why is it not respected? Whichever your favorite country is, ask yourselves. Tanmay Deshpande says, is Russia becoming the most successful revisionist power of the 21st century after its November gains? November gains? Which November gains? Are you talking about Ukraine? The lines on the map in Ukraine have been kind of frozen for a very long time. Steady situation, maybe a couple of miles here and there. I'm not sure what major November gains have happened. If something major would have happened, I would have known about it. I don't register small changes, incremental changes, or progress in the Ukraine war. I register major changes. So my radar is set for major changes, major progress or regress or whatever. But a couple of kilometers have been caught here. Some village was captured. I don't really care about that. So I'm not sure what gains happened in November. Now, is Russia a revisionist power? I would say a lot of Indians, they seek to regain Pakistan occupied Kashmir. Now, some people in the West would call it revisionism. You're trying to change the lines on the map. You're trying to rewrite history. Some people in India want what? Akhand Bharat. That could also be portrayed as revisionism. China seeks to expand its territory. China seeks to take Taiwan. China seeks territory from India. China seeks territory from Russia. Isn't that revisionism? So these terms like revisionism, revisionist power, etc., these are used especially in the Western media as sticks to beat nations with. So I don't know about revisionist power. Russia is simply looking out for its best interests. And what are Russia's best interests? You don't want NATO on your doorstep. So you deal with Ukraine in the way it has to be done. And that's what it's doing. And how has the Ukraine campaign gone thus far? I would say very successful, right? It was known that the West would unleash sanctions on Russia, and they have. The United States, the Europeans, every nation you could imagine, all the vassals of the US came together and unleashed every sanction you could imagine on Russia, and it did not have the effect that they had intended. The intention was to destroy Russia, crush Russia's economy. What happened? On the contrary, Russia's economy actually grew to a certain extent, right? It's not in recession, it's actually growing. It's growing better compared to the European economies. And Russia has not been isolated. It has certain nations on its side. Some are on Russia's side because of convenience. Some are on Russia's side because of other reasons, whatever it is, right? So Russia has been successful thus far in the Ukraine conflict. And the way things are going, it looks like Trump will sooner or later insist and prevail upon Ukraine to accept a ceasefire proposal, which has to be in Russia's favor because Russia has the facts on the ground. Russia has created facts on the ground, and those you can draw a map whichever way you want, but you know what's there on the ground, right? So you have to recognize that. And so Russia is going to prevail in the Ukraine conflict. So it's going to be successful. Now, is it becoming the most successful revisionist power? I don't know. The 21st century, it's another 75 years to go. Thus far, Russia is doing a good deal of standing up to the West, and we are witnessing the emergence of Cold War 2.0, which most likely will drag India into it as well. And it remains to be seen on which side India goes. Minimalist Maverick says, it seems like Russia is going all in this war, and the West won't stop supplying arms to Ukraine. Timeline wise, if it drags till 2035. See, Russia, there's this question that pops up all the time, doesn't it? Why is Russia playing the slow game in the Ukraine war? Why is it dragging out the conflict for years? Why is it happy with this frozen war scenario? Why is it happy with this slow war scenario? Frozen battle lines, stagnant battle lines. Why doesn't it simply make a move on Kiev and finish it off, right? So that's one question that keeps popping up. But we know that Russia has the military capabilities required to do that. They can flatten Ukraine tomorrow morning if they want to. But clearly they don't want to. And why do they not want to? First of all, they don't see the Ukrainians as foreign to them. They see the Ukrainians as their kin, Slavic people. And secondly, the longer this war drags on, see, if you end the war tomorrow, you take Kiev, you dethrone Zelensky, send him into exile, hopefully, whatever, and you partition Ukraine at a certain line, then the war ends. And then if the war ends, what happens? The West has to stop supplying weapons, arms, ammunition, money, funds, whatever to Ukraine because Ukraine no longer exists. So the financial drain on the West ends. But if the war goes on, the West keeps on investing money and arms, ammunition, whatever the Ukrainians need. So it keeps on bleeding the West. But you could argue it's also bleeding Russia. But you see, Russia is an autarky. And this war has actually strengthened Russia's industrial base, military base, economic base. It's had a very counterintuitive effect on Russia. It has strengthened Russia. Russia is now a full-fledged war economy, and they are robust now. Russia, if you look at historically how Russia has performed in wars, initially in any war, they don't perform well. But give it a couple of years and then see them rebound, right? Initially, they don't do well, but then they adapt. They adapt. And they have the territory, and they have the resources, and they have whatever else is needed. So Russia has adapted, and Russia is doing well now. So, so the war will go on as long as it is beneficial to Russia, and that's why Trump wants to end it soon, right? So that it stops being such a drain on the West. So how do I see this going? I I would say that the war will most likely end in some kind of ceasefire, maybe in the next 6 to 12 months. Trump will ensure it happens because, see, first of all, it's a matter of prestige for Trump also. He had promised his voters that he will end the Ukraine war on day one of his presidency. And this has not happened. It makes him look very bad. Trump doesn't like looking bad. So he's going to make it happen. And if Zelensky and the Europeans insist on keeping the war going on, then he will do something about it. Right? So the way I see it, the war should end in the next 6 to 12 months. It will end in some kind of ceasefire, in some kind of ceasefire deal, which will not be good for Ukraine, but it will recognize the realities on the ground. And until the war ends, the West has no option but to keep supplying arms, weapons, fuel, food supplies, humanitarian supplies, fighter planes, whatever fuel, etc. to Ukraine. And that's a big drain on the Western economy, on the European economy. So I think it will end sooner rather than later. ICMBS says, it seems the Prime Minister heard my critique about the education system that keeps us in inferiority complex. How would you go about changing it? The Prime Minister has heard my critique. I recall seeing some statement, hearing about some statement from the Prime Minister about the Macaulayan education system or something. It's good to hear that, but what action is being taken is the question. I have been speaking about this 5, 6, I don't know how many years. As long as I have been a face in the public domain, I have been speaking about the Macaulayan education system, how it needs the colonial education system. It needs to be reformed. I have at least, I think, 3 episodes of the Ask Abhijit show dedicated to the education system and the need to reform the education system. And I have not only pointed out the problems, which anybody can, I have also given solutions, which very few people do. I've given very specific solutions. Are any of those solutions being implemented is the question I would like to ask. There is something called the new education policy. The new education policy doesn't address any of the fundamental defects, issues in the education system. You can revise some of the syllabus. You can, restructure the education system in some ways. It's a good start, but it's a minor change. The deeper malaise still remains, right? So how would I go about changing the education system? Once again, let me show you all how I would do that. I will not explain it in detail right now, but I will tell you where to look for my explanation about how to change the education system, because I have spoken about this in great detail. So let me put that on the screen. 1 second, give me a second. So you can check out those episodes in which I have spoken about this in great detail. Give me a second. All right. So this is my channel. This is the live stream tab over here. As you can see, it was about episode 28, 29. See, okay. So I have 3 episodes. Episode 28 of Ask Abhijit, episode 30, and episode 31. In these 3 episodes, I have spoken in great detail about how the education system is a disaster for India, how it is keeping India down, it is ruining the future of the future generations of Indians, and what needs to be done to fix this. Episodes 28, 30, and 31 of the Ask Abhijit show, the same show that you're watching right now. This was about more than 4 years ago that I spoke about it. And whatever I said in those episodes, it still is 100% relevant today. So that's how I would go about changing it. If you are interested, please watch those episodes. Thank you, sir. Thank you, ma'am. Okay. WBR464 says, did you know Yevgeny Prigozhin was a Jew? I did not know that. I'm not aware. Was he a Jew? If he was a Jew, well, okay. Zelensky is also a Jew. There are plenty of Jewish people who are in prominent positions in the West. It is what it is. Yeah. So I was not aware that he's a Jew. If you would like me to fact check that, I can do that, but not sure how it is relevant. Yevgeny Kafelnik Prigozhin. Oh, was he Jewish? This fine gentleman. Let's see. Open up. open up. All right, let us see. Father was, etc. His father and stepfather are believed to be of Jewish descent. So it's believed to be, we don't know for sure. And how does it really matter? It's all right. Okay. Andy Bhatt says, big fan. Thank you very much, Andy G. Please throw some light on the recent G20 summit. Did Mr. Modi go do good by visiting it? I hope Donald Trump is not angry. Tariff threat. I haven't examined the G20 summit. See, um, just FYI to everybody, I'm not a news surfer. The way I examine the world, analyze the world, is I do it not in real time. I take my time. If something happens, I'll wait for a week for it to for the thing to happen. Let's say there's a summit, a major summit happening somewhere. I will not be stuck to the television screen watching the latest news updates about what's happening. I'll take my time. I'll wait for a week for the summit, after the summit is done, and then I will examine what are the major outcomes of the summit. So the summit has just happened, I would say. Is it still on? I'm not sure about that. So I'm not even sure if it's on or not. And I know that Prime Minister Modi attended the summit, obviously, and it was in South Africa, if I recall. I mean, the images of Prime Minister Modi's visit were all over social media. I mean, even today I saw some of them. So it looks like it is still ongoing, or maybe it's just over. I'm not sure. I'll take a week or so to analyze what happened in the summit, what came out of it, what was its relevance for India, and then we can discuss it. Um, right now, it's too early for me to comment. Okay, but I will certainly revisit this matter. Let's say in a week's time. But did Mr. Modi do a good thing by attending the G20 summit? Well, yes. India should attend these summits. We hosted the G20, right, in 2023, just a couple of years ago. And one of the major things we did in the 2023 summit was to make the African Union a member of the G20. So, yeah, nobody had bothered to do that until we did it. So, yeah, it is important for India to be present in these summits and participate and take a leadership role wherever applicable, relevant, and possible. And so it's a good thing that Mr. Modi did attend the summit and participate in it. I'm not sure about Donald Trump, whether he's angry or not. Tariff threats, yeah, well, tariffs are on, right? And there's a 500% tariff threat also that there is somewhere down the corner. We'll see about that. Minimalist Maverick says, explain African and Latin American geopolitics and who is whose vassals and business opportunities. If possible, can you make a 6-hour video on this? Well, you gave me the solution. You first gave me the problem and then gave me the solution. See, if you want me to explain African and Latin American geopolitics, it will take me 6 hours. Africa is the largest continent. Latin America, South America is a gigantic continent. And to understand geopolitics, you have to understand history. Now, it's impossible for me to explain in the next 5 minutes, even 15 minutes, the history, the context of just, let's say, African geopolitics. Because there are so many factors, so many players involved. When the first question I took was about the conflict in Sudan, right? The civil war in Sudan. That took me like 10, 15 minutes to answer. And even for that, I gave a very high level overview of what's been happening in Sudan. So you see, it will probably take me a 6-hour video to explain all of that in detail. But if I were to explain about the vassalhood situation, there is no major power in Africa. They're all somebody or the other's vassals. There is, again, same way, there is no major geopolitical power in South America, even Central America. They are all somebody's vassals, either directly or indirectly. Who is that somebody? Well, it's definitely not Russia or China. The Chinese are kind of involved in Africa, definitely. Even the Russians are. The Chinese are the money, the Russians are the muscles, or the muscle. You have the Wagner Group, and then you have the evolution of the Wagner Group. But whatever it is, it's the same entity, or maybe a slightly evolved or modified entity, whatever. So you have Russia and China involved in Africa geopolitically because they've got to be present there. Africa is so rich in resources, and why would they not want to partake of that? Similarly, in South America also, the Chinese have been a decent, not a decent, a robust player actually, the past 15 or so years. And yeah, but overall, if you look at Latin America, it is under, you could say, the domination, the hegemony of the United States. The good old Monroe Doctrine of the 19th century still applies. It is no longer fashionable to call it the Monroe Doctrine because it sounds outdated, but it is what it is. It still applies. And in Africa, well, the French were a major power for quite some time, but now they have completely withdrawn and they have created a power vacuum which the Russians will be happy to exploit, even the Chinese. But mainly, the major power in the continent of Africa is still the United States. Okay. Ritik Pawar says, why did Trump skip the G20 summit? Is G2 a new world order now? I am not sure why Trump skipped the G20 summit. Like I said a while ago, I have not. I'll take my time to analyze what happened in the G20 summit. I don't surf the news in real time because, see, why? You may wonder, why do I not keep track of what's happening in real time? I mean, if I am supposedly a geopolitical analyst or whatever, then should I not be staying in touch with what's happening in the world? Or should I not be interested in what's happening right now? Isn't it important? Right? You see, the truth is that the more you watch the news, the less you know about what's happening in the world. 99% of the news is noise. It's shouting, it's propaganda, it's agenda setting, it's narrative setting. The more you spend your time watching the news, the less you will understand what's happening. So I don't watch the news. I take my time and then I have my sources of where to obtain my information from. And then I analyze it calmly. Right? So I'm not a news surfer. I'm going to take my time, and I'm not quite sure what Trump has decided about the G20. Did he skip it? In case he skipped it, why did he skip it? I'll look into that. Is G2 a new world order right now? Not quite. It's still too early for a G2 situation. It's more like a G4, G5 situation. Who are the G4, G5? So you obviously have the US and China, the two major economies, but China is not a superpower. Even if the US is trying to position China as kind of a peer rival, peer competitor, China is nothing compared to the US, especially in terms of military capabilities and power projection capabilities. Economically, it's kind of reaching there, right? So you have the US and China, there's G1 and G2, the two. Then you have Russia, a major military power, right? The most powerful nuclear power in the world. So that's G3, there you have it. Then you have the fourth largest economy in the world, soon to be the third largest economy, India, which is also a major, at least a regional power, right? It's one of the great powers in the world. That's India. Despite all of its problems, India is still there, a major power, and it's a growing power. I would not say a rising power. I would say growing power. It's growing. India is going to grow at 6-7% a year, hopefully. Maybe I would like 10%, but let's see. So India is there. Then you have the European Union, which is not really a major player anymore. Europe is going to be the backwater of the world in the 21st century, but it's still a player. So it's like a G4, G5 situation right now. And the US doesn't want that. They would like a G2 situation. The US doesn't want multipolarity, they want bipolarity. But it's too early to say that G2 is a thing now, even though Trump would like it that way. Bhaskar Bandit says, land border between China and Russia is pretty large. Well, yes, pretty large indeed. Then, what is so special about the Ussuri River area that China chose to occupy it, recognize it as their own in current maps and in history? Well, you see, you have to, if you want to understand this, I have to tell you a story. And what does a story mean in the context of geopolitics? I will discuss history here. So you see, okay, let's look at the map. Obviously, to understand what we are discussing here, we have to see the map. So let us pull out the map of the world. Where is it? Here it is. So first of all, Russia and China, do they have a border? Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. So you see, there's this border here. This border, which is what, about 50 kilometers wide. See here? Oh, it's not even 50 kilometers. In a straight line, it's about 39 kilometers. But if you do the contours and all that, if you do a contour integral, it may be about 50 kilometers. So on the one side, on the left, on the west, you have the great nation of Kazakhstan. On the east, you have Mongolia. South, you have Chinese occupied whatever, East Turkestan. And in the north, you have Russia, 50 kilometers there. Then you have Mongolia. Then you go further east, and then you have the major Russia China border that is very, very significant. All right. Starting from here all the way north of Manchuria and all the way to the North Korea border. So, south of Vladivostok, you have a trijunction of Russia, China, and North Korea. Okay. Russia, China, and North Korea. Where is North Korea? Where is it? Yeah, so it's a trijunction. Russia, China, North Korea. Let me zoom in. This is indeed North Korea, isn't it? All right, North Korea. Yes. So that is the deal. So it's a pretty long border. Now, historically, in the 1969, Russia and China nearly went to war. The Ussuri River clashes, the Ussuri River dispute, and there was this island the Chinese called the Zhenbao Island or whatever it is. It's somewhere here. Which island is it? It will be a little difficult for me to pinpoint the exact location of the island. It will be somewhere in this area. Is it this one? Let me see if I can find it. Zhenbao Island. Zoom in. There we have it. So you can see now it's on the Chinese side of the border. But there was a time when the border ran across the island, and this was disputed by both nations, and the two nations nearly went to war. There were major military clashes over here. Hundreds of soldiers died, and the Russians had decided to nuke China. But the Americans came and rescued China, and that's how things went. So now, what's the deal? What is special about the Ussuri River region, and why does China seek this? So once again, we go to the map. So you see, if you look at Russia's Far East, it is enormous, as you can see. But Russia was based out of what? Well, if you look at the origin of the Rus people, their original capital, going back about 1,000 years, was Kiev. It's now called Kiev for some reason. It was Kiev. They were called the Kievan Rus. And later, the capital became Moscow, Muscovy. And for a couple of centuries, the Rus were under the Mongol yoke for a couple of centuries. And eventually, the Duchy of Muscovy became a big thing. And eventually, Russia became an empire. And then Russia started expanding eastwards. And all these territories, these were Tungusic peoples who used to live here, Mongolic people. I mean, north of Mongolia, you have a big region which was historically also Mongolia, which is now part of Russia. So the Russians, the Rus, they expanded eastwards gradually. And what did they seek? They sought fur trading in the frozen wastelands of northern Eurasia. Nobody else wanted to go there. So the Rus went there and they traded in furs, and they slowly annexed all these territories. Now the Chinese claimed many of the territories, which are now currently part of Russia. And in the 1850s, the Chinese are fighting major revolts. The Dungun revolt, and the East Turkestan revolt, etc., the Hui revolt. So they were fighting major revolts in territories that they claimed as their own in the west of what is today China. And you also had the gunboat diplomacy, the opium wars that was going on. The West was bullying China, the Chinese century of humiliation. So during this time, the Russians took territory from China as part of treaties that they signed with the Chinese. So the Russians, through legal means, took territory from the Chinese, major territory, which is now part of the Russian Far East. But the Chinese have always has seen that as a historical injustice, and they seek those territories back. But the Chinese say that the whole of Eurasia is ours, essentially. So that's the deal. So it looks like the Ussuri River thing was, one of the points of the dispute, but the Chinese claim way more territory than what is on the map right now. So the Chinese claim Vladivostok, they claim many other parts of the Russian Far East, and it's going to be an issue between Russia and China sooner or later. Right? So that's kind of the history. If you see that in the historical context, then you will understand that there's a lot that's happened in this region. The Chinese have claims, the Russians actually have, facts on the ground. The Chinese are revisionists. They say that, we had way more territory and we want it back eventually. That is the deal. Aries Manticore says, a small suggestion. You can try to host live streams on Kick as well. I am live streaming on Kick right now. This live streaming that you may be watching on YouTube, it is also simultaneously being live streamed to Kick, to Twitch, to X or Twitter. It's being live streamed to LinkedIn, and I sometimes live stream to Facebook also at the same time. So I'm live streaming to multiple destinations at the same time. Yeah, so it's a good suggestion, and I am grateful for you that you have suggested this. I'm doing that, and many creators have been shadow locked on YouTube. Kick is an alternative with a much younger crowd. Keep going. Thank you very much. Yes, I know. I'm not sure about many creators, if this has happened to other creators also on YouTube. But as you know, my channel is there's an upper limit that's been put to my channel. It will not reach 950 for the foreseeable future, right? Somebody in YouTube is not a big fan of me. Probably some fine gentleman or fine lady in YouTube India. Somebody. Maybe I should do something about it. We'll see about that. That's okay. It doesn't matter. Right, next. Finding myself, Srishti Sapkota says, as a local from Siliguri, I'm seeing rapid development, new industries, bigger highways, more air activity. Given the current geopolitical situation, how will the state of Siliguri be in the next 10 years? So you're asking me to make a future prediction. I don't really make future predictions. I can, but let's understand what we are discussing here. We'll talk about Siliguri. So, excuse me. When we discuss Siliguri, we are discussing this, what is called the Siliguri corridor. So there is this city over here called Siliguri. It's part of West Bengal. Even Darjeeling is part of West Bengal. And north of that, we have Sikkim, obviously. So Siliguri is part of West Bengal. And to the east, you have the great state of Assam. So we have the Siliguri corridor, which is roughly 30 kilometers wide, 22 kilometers, 23 kilometers wide. Well. Yeah. Which connects the Indian Far East to what they call the Indian mainland. Right? And for some reason, our fantastic leaders of the past, they decided that we will accept this sort of map with this so-called chicken's neck that connects our Far East with the rest of the nation. So in Siliguri, as Shrishti says, she is seeing rapid development, new industries, bigger highways, better highways, more air activity. So I'm glad to hear that, first of all. Yeah. And obviously Siliguri is a very important sector, location for India. It's very important that we have robust infrastructure in the Siliguri region, because see, it is obviously something that borders the nation of Bangladesh, and it is also not far from Chinese occupied Tibet, and it also borders with Nepal. So it's a region that is kind of international. If you want to consider Bangladesh and Nepal international, it is what it is, right? And Bangladesh obviously was historically East Pakistan. It has once again transformed into kind of like East Pakistan. It's not a very friendly nation right now. It's a newly minted US vassal state and kind of hostile towards India. So there is that also. So that's the current geopolitical situation, right? That's the current geopolitical situation. Even Nepal has had a regime change very recently, a so-called Gen Z regime change, revolution, whatever you want to call it. And there is the question of what kind of government is in Nepal also. So given this situation, what will be the state of Siliguri in the next 10 years? I would say that Siliguri should be in a better state in the next 10 years. One of the things I've heard is that there's a significant infiltration of Bangladeshis, illegal Bangladeshi infiltrators in the region. That's what I've heard apocryphally. I'm not sure if it is entirely correct. I've heard there is a big number of Bangladeshi infiltrators who have settled in the region. I am not sure if it's true. I hope it is not true. But that is something that the government needs to do something about. I would say urgently. As is the case of the rest of the country, the Bangladeshi infiltrators, the illegals, need to be repatriated to Bangladesh at the earliest. So hopefully that is done, if the situation is indeed the case, that, like I said. And I would say that we need fortification of railways, highways, all of that in the region. What else could happen in the next 10 years? Well, the ideal situation is that the Siliguri corridor is widened and Rangpur, etc., returns to India. That would be the ideal situation. If the nation of East Pakistan persists with its anti-India stance, and if they give us an opportunity, then if the opportunity presents itself, we should take back the Rangapur region, Dinjapur, Rangapur, etc., and reintegrate it with the motherland. So that is something that could potentially happen in the next 10 years. Beyond that, it is well hard to say. Yeah, but I'm hopeful that the situation in Siliguri improves even more compared to what we are seeing right now. King Ritwik says, in the 1970s, India was weak, India was poor. We needed the help of the USSR/Russia to defend ourselves from the US and Pakistan. Still, then, how could the USSR not vassalize India? They saved us. Does that make Mrs. Gandhi better than Mr. Nehru? So the question is, was India a vassal state of the USSR in the 20th century? India was definitely an ally of the USSR. India proclaimed itself to be non-aligned, and India did do certain things that were not in line with the USSR's interests. For example, when the USSR invaded Afghanistan on December 25, 1979, India opposed that, right? But overall, India was aligned with the USSR. So you could say that India and the USSR were allies, despite India's posturing as being, that it was a non-aligned nation. India was very much on the side of the USSR. And yeah, India was weak, India was poor because of the economic model our fantastic leaders had adopted, Fabian socialism. Yeah. So that was the case. And Pakistan was in better shape than us. Their economy was doing better than ours until the late 1980s, even the early 1990s, right? And the Pakistanis had aligned with the United States. They chose the winning side. We chose the side that would eventually lose the Cold War. And we had to rely on the USSR for support, especially in 1971, right? And so on. We know the situation. Now, did the USSR vassalize India? Not quite. Why do I say India was not vassalized? Because the USSR did not control India's foreign policy. The USSR did not control India's economic policy. When you vassalize the nation, you control their economic and foreign policies, and you leave them to deal with their internal situation. That you take care of, but you have to do what we say about your economic and foreign policy and military policy. So that was not the case. That's why the USSR did not vassalize India. Why did the USSR not vassalize India? I would say that they did not see the need to do that. There were other nations that were aligned with the USSR in a variety of similar ways, and the USSR did not seek to vassalize that. Was it a good thing? Was it a bad thing? I think it was something that was bad for the USSR. If they had adopted the American policy of vassalizing other nations by insisting that they control those nations' economic and foreign and military policies like they did with Pakistan and other nations, then the USSR would have had way more power projection capabilities. But for whatever reason, they chose not to do that, and that's why it was good for us, of course. Yeah, that we were not vassals. It is alleged that the USSR had, you could say, allegedly bought out certain politicians in India, allegedly, whoever they were. But overall, India was not a vassal. So the USSR did not seek to vassalize India. They sought to have India aligned with them ideologically and geopolitically, which we were. So does that make Mrs. Gandhi better than Mr. Nehru? Look, overall, Mrs. Gandhi was a far better leader than her father, Mr. Nehru. There's no question about that. No question about that. Overall, she was. Aries Manticore says, should we focus on creating multi-terrain AI drone swarms instead of jets and submarines? Cheaper, faster, and more potent with our missile technology? I would say very much so, yes. Right? But for that, we need high-quality indigenous AI systems. Does India have a single homegrown high quality AI system? Does India have even one of those? I haven't seen any. Maybe I'm wrong, and if I'm wrong, then I'll be happy about that. But India, whether it is the private sector or the public sector, whether it's the government of India, whether it's any IIT or whatever, or some private sector company, does has anybody developed a high quality AI model similar to the quality that you have of AI models that you have coming out of the United States and China? Do we have anything similar? We don't, right? We don't. So to create these drone swarms that are AI enabled, AI equipped, you need high quality AI first of all. You can have some autonomy, etc. That is not really, see, for example, during Operation Sindoor, we had these ancient anti-aircraft guns that were not quite AI equipped, but they had been made kind of autonomous, right? They were able to take out all the Pakistani drones and whatever else the Pakistanis lobbed at us. So that's not quite AI, but it was kind of autonomous. These were self automatically targeting weapons. So you take a 1950s weapon and add some layers of software to it, and it becomes a tremendously potent thing. So India is very good at doing these things. Now imagine if India has its own AI systems. Imagine what India will do then. So we should do that. I 100% agree. So you develop military AI systems that can control swarms of drones. Let's say you have a drone that costs 10,000 rupees. Get 1,000 of those, like a swarm of mosquitoes, and then you unleash them, and they all talk to each other. They know exactly what the others are doing in real time, in space and time, and they connect with the satellite or whatever to the home base. And the home base, you have AI, and even on the drones, you have AI chips, and then you can go and unleash mayhem. You can take out aircraft carriers with that if you want to, right? Just these flying drones. Now imagine if you have undersea drones, or even surface, surface of the ocean drones. So the Ukrainians had attacked the Kerch bridge a couple of times, the bridge that connects Crimea with mainland Russia. They had one of the attacks was done with these autonomous boats that were either remote control or autonomously targeted, whatever it was, and it was able to damage the bridge. So imagine you have small boats which have explosives, and they know what to do, how to bypass defenses and whatnot. Then imagine what those can do. You can also have undersea vehicles, robotic submarines, small ones that may look like a large fish, or that may be the size of a large fish, but that can unleash mayhem because of its explosive payloads. And how do you control those? Well, different technologies. So my point is, yes, we should do that. We very much should do that. Then eventually, all of this will replace jets and submarines. Maybe not submarines, maybe not long range jets. See, I'll tell you what's the difference. And where AI drone swarms and these things will not be able to do certain roles. When you have fighter planes, some of the fighter planes have very long ranges. When you have strategic bombers, they have ranges of thousands of kilometers. Can a drone fly, let's say, 1,000 kilometers? Most likely not. Drones have batteries, right? Lithium ion batteries, sodium ion, whatever technology of battery you use, but it's going to have a limited charge, which means it will have a limited range. So drones can only be used for tactical uh, purposes, tactical warfare. You can't use them for strategic purposes, which is long range stuff. So that's one of the limitations of drones, but I'm sure technology will eventually be able to overcome those limitations as well. But yes, India should focus on indigenous AI, high quality AI. India should focus on quantum computing, very important. And India should focus on drone warfare. And we kind of are. But imagine if we have our own AI system and then we integrate that with our drone swarms. Imagine that. Yeah, we should do that for sure. Bhaskar Bandit says a pattern as to how dictators who get funded from the West to create havoc in their own country or other countries later get taken care of. Saddam Hussein, Pahlavi, Ziaul Haq, Anwar Sadat, because they go rogue or why? Okay. So when we talk about Mohammad Raza Pahlavi, he was a US vassal, obviously. He was a US asset, who was ruling Persia. And see, so Pahlavi had ousted Mohammed Mossadegh. Mohammed Mossadegh had nationalized Iran's oil industry. He had ejected the British petroleum or British oil, whatever it was called, from Persia. And that made the West very sad. Very sad. It was such a heartbreaking thing for the United States and for the West, which is why Mohammed Mossadegh was ousted and Mohammad Reza Pahlavi took over, and he once again opened the doors to the West and allowed the West to siphon off Persia's oil. So Pahlavi was eventually ousted in 1979. He was not taken care of by the West. He was taken care of by the regime of the mullahs, by Khomeini, right? So Pahlavi was not taken care of. He was not ousted by the United States or the West. It was an indigenous kind of thing, you could say. But when it comes to Saddam Hussein, he was a US asset, wasn't he? The United States used Saddam Hussein as a stick to beat Iran with, because Iran had ousted their vassal, their puppet, Pahlavi. So the US armed Saddam Hussein's Iraq and induced Iraq to go to war with Iran. That's the Iran-Iraq war of the 1980s, a ruinous war that ruined both nations. And eventually, what was the outcome? Nothing. It was just ruinous, and it ruined both nations, especially Persia, especially Iran. So the United States used Saddam Hussein for that specific purpose, and then they disposed of him. They gave him the go-ahead to invade Kuwait in 1990 or wherever it was. And then they said, why did you do this? You are evil. We're going to smash you now. That's what they did to Saddam. Zia-ul Haq was funded by the US. In the aftermath of the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan, the Americans funded the Pakistani IS, the Pakistani military, and taught them how to use what we now call terrorism, the Mujahideen, to fight the Soviets in Afghanistan. And once that ended, the Mujahideen were rerouted into India, into Kashmir. In the 1980s, the Pakistanis were playing havoc in Punjab, Indian Punjab also, right? So all of that was funded by the US. So Zia-ul Haq was the Pakistani dictator of the time. And then Zia-ul Haq goes on an airplane with the US ambassador, Arnold Raffel, and there's a crate of mangoes on the plane, and the crate of mangoes explodes, exploding a case of exploding mangoes, and Zia-ul Haq dies. So the US decided that it's enough of Zia-ul Haq and we'll have somebody else, most likely. And it looks like their own ambassador was made collateral damage. Anwar al-Sadat, different story. So the question is there a pattern to this? There is obviously a pattern to this. So the US has historically been very fond of dictators. They preach democracy and human rights to the world, but if you look at the number of regime changes they've done in Africa and other countries, you will see they always install dictators in these countries because dictators are easy to deal with. Democracy is a messy thing. You can't predict the outcome of what's going to happen in the country in the next 5 years. An election can change everything. Then you have to cultivate new assets. Why do that? Invest in dictators. So the US preaches democracy to the world, but they invest in dictators in various nations across the world. They've done so many regime change operations in Africa, in the 20th century, in other parts of Asia, so much more. So there's a pattern. And eventually, if a dictator becomes too big for his boots, if he shows a tendency to now no longer cooperate with the US or be obstinate in certain demands, you can always get rid of him, right? And have somebody else take over the country. So there's a pattern, no question about that. If you look at Africa, there are plenty of places where you have dictators who have been installed, yeah, and many of them, and some of them are doing a really good job, actually. I shall not take names of countries. Feel Strongman says, your favorite geopolitical joke apart from Stalin Sri Lanka. Favorite geopolitical joke? Oh, that's a googly, like they say. Googly. Is it a flipper? Flipper. I can't think of a geopolitical joke right now. Let me think about it. If I can recall something, I'll let you know. I can't think of a geopolitical joke right now. Shubham Vavare says Christopher Columbus was Jewish, searched for India the day after the Spanish expelled Jews. Is it true? Was the internal politics in the Maratha Empire why we lost to Brits? We are discussing, sir, Shubham ji. This, if you look at the title of this episode, it is Geopolitics episode. We are not discussing history today, sir. If I start discussing history now, if I start discussing science, then the people who have come to see me speak about geopolitics, they'll be very disappointed. I have made a promise in the title of the episode Geopolitics. I shall not break my promise, sir. It is bad form to break your promises. You have to keep your word if you are an honorable person. So I shall stick to geopolitics today and we can discuss history in a history episode. All right. Thank you, sir. Hindutva Rises says, do you foresee a Pahalgam type attack in the next month, considering the deep state's attempt to dismantle the ruling party have failed? I will not talk about next month. How will I know? See, understand this. If you want me to say whether something will happen next week or next month or 78 days from now, then you are presupposing that I have some very specific information, right? I can give you an answer to this question only if I have very specific information that points in that direction. Now, I am simply a person who observes the world, who has some understanding of how the world operates and works. I have some understanding of the patterns and cycles of history, which translate into geopolitics. And that's the basis on which I speak about things. I don't have access to classified information, to privileged information. I don't have access to information from security agencies or intelligence agencies. And that's why I cannot answer a question about whether I foresee something happening next month. What I can tell you is that the likelihood of Pahalgam type attacks in the next 6 to 12 months is higher compared to pre Pahalgam or pre Pulwama. Pahalgam, pre Pahalgam. See, the Pakistanis, understand this. Let's discuss three nations: China, India, Pakistan. China is about roughly 4 times more powerful than India. And India is, let's say, I don't know, what, 10 times more powerful than Pakistan, maybe 15, maybe 20 times more powerful than Pakistan. So there's a huge gulf between India and Pakistan, and also between China and India. So when it comes to India and China, knowing that China is 4 times more powerful than us, we don't poke the Chinese, right? We don't do things that will irritate the Chinese, annoy the Chinese, bleed the Chinese. We don't do a thing like that. But when it comes to Pakistan and India, the Pakistanis, despite being so much less powerful than India, they keep on poking, prodding, and trying to bleed India. That's been their strategy from day one, right? From 1947 onwards. That's always been their strategy. So they will continue that. But they will seek to continue this strategy of poking, prodding, and bleeding India and conducting terrorist activities, if possible, in India, while keeping it below a certain threshold. What is the threshold? The threshold that will lead to war. Because see, the Indian government's new policy, new doctrine, whatever you want to call it, is that a terrorist attack is going to be seen as an act of war. But what kind of terrorist attack? It's gonna have to be a major terrorist attack. So how many people died in the Pahalgam attack? I would say more than 20, right? Something similar to that. So maybe the Pakistanis will continue their horrific, evil policy of terrorism, but they'll keep it below a certain threshold, perhaps. Yeah, so that could happen. That there is a high possibility of that continuing to happen. Maybe they will, instead of conducting cross-border terrorism, maybe they will support various individuals, let's say, who may be Indian citizens, like those they're not alleged doctors, they're real doctors, right? Those doctors who were recently apprehended They were all Indian citizens, right? So if they do terrorism in India, can we blame Pakistan for that? Can't really blame Pakistan for that. So that's the kind of things they will do. Um, but yes, there is a higher probability of this sort of thing happening in the next 6 to 12 months. I can't say about next month. The reborn Sanatani says, do you see Canada coming out of the job, housing, rapidly increasing inflation, medical system, immigration crisis anytime soon? Or that won't happen as long as it keeps playing second fiddle to the US? Look, Canada is destined to play second fiddle to the US as long as Canada exists. Understand that the United States, it allows the existence of Canada. Why does it allow the existence of Canada? Because Canada is nothing but an extension of the US. It is a vassal state. The US doesn't need to occupy Canada or send the military to Canada because Canada is harmless. And Canada's external policy, economic policy, it all serves US interests, right? And Canada doesn't have any leaders. They have not allowed any real leaders to emerge in Canada. Do you see any leader who can take Canada in a new direction? Do you see any such person on the horizon? You only see mediocrities, puppets like Justin Trudeau, Justin Trudeau. What a loser of a politician he is. Absolutely zero leadership quality. That sort of person. Now you have this gentleman called Carney, who has been tasked with taking Canada in a slightly different direction. But to solve all the major problems, the job crisis, the housing crisis, the inflation, medical system, immigration. See, immigration can be solved like that. Like that. Just change the policy and enforce it. Right? But they won't do it. And anyway, Canada is a nation of immigrants. If you disregard the indigenous people who are second-class citizens, right? Canada is a nation of immigrants, but they want to keep. So you can't really do that also. But yeah, you can if it's up to you. So the situation in Canada, it's in my opinion not going to change significantly. And Canada, as long as it exists, will play second fiddle to the US. It simply cannot break out of the US orbit. The moment it goes against the US, the moment it tries to decouple its decision-making process from the US interests, there's going to be a tremendous set of repercussions for whoever is the leader who has decided to change course. Won't happen. Canada is completely at the service of the US, and that's how it is going to continue. So I don't see any major changes happening in Canada. If there is an immigration crisis, well, the roots of the immigration crisis don't lie in Canada. They lie further south. And whatever else also. Yeah. Essentially, you have a bunch of extremely mediocre politicians who are doing a terrible job. And for some reason, your people, Canadians, keep voting for them. So, and I haven't even discussed the support for the Khalistani separatists who are actually Canadian citizens, right? All that nonsense. Sangam Kumar says, is the US sniffing war in the Indo-Pacific so ended a war? The US still hasn't ended the Ukraine war. They seek to end it soon. Trump wants a ceasefire now. I mean, he's been angling for a ceasefire from the day he became president for the second time, but it's not really worked out for him. But he is desperate to end the Ukraine war. He wants a ceasefire. Does he seek a ceasefire because they want a war in the Indo-Pacific region? Well, I would say there's a high likelihood of war between India and Pakistan in the next 2-3 years. Much more major war than the last one, the 3-day war, Operation Sindoor. There was a limited war, wasn't it? It wasn't a full-scale war because the infantries, the ground forces weren't involved. It was all aerial warfare mostly, missile warfare, drone warfare, mostly. So it was not really a major full-scale war. But there is a high likelihood of India and Pakistan going to war, in my opinion, in the next 1 to 3 years. 1 to 3 years, right? And war in Indo-Pacific. Now, when you say Indo-Pacific, you obviously mean something wider than India-Pakistan. I don't foresee India and China going to war right now, in the near future at least. But what about the Indo-Pacific region, like you say? By that, if we take India and Pakistan out of the equation and India and China out of the equation, we're obviously discussing the China, Korea, Taiwan, Japan situation, right? Is there a likelihood of war there? I would say it would be stupid for China to get embroiled in a war over there. It would be stupid for China to make a move on Taiwan at this point in time. Wait another decade or two, then take Taiwan. It is stupid to do it right now. So I don't see a war happening in East Asia unless something is done to provoke China, which China can't do anything about, which crosses certain Chinese red lines. For example, Japan going nuclear, for example. And I don't know. So you see, Japan is completely in American control. The Americans can make Japan do whatever they want, and they can also make Korea do whatever they want. But Korea is not a military power. Japan is. So it all depends on the US. Do they want to provoke China into some kind of war in the Asia Pacific region, right? Using proxies such as Japan and South Korea, maybe Taiwan. If the Americans succeed in doing that, that could hurt China to a certain extent. Uh, but China will be obviously cautious about this. So I think there's a high likelihood of war between India and Pakistan in the next couple of years or 3 years. Apart from that, I don't really see a major war erupting anywhere else, unless the Americans do something magical and induce China to go to war with Japan or somebody. Aries Manticore says, could Russia trigger a cold NATO conflict with Poland and Sweden if the Ukraine conflict ends, a similar frozen conflict but with small NATO countries? Would the US follow up with the treaty in this scenario? I would say it's not in Russia's interest to be in a perpetual state of war, right? So when it comes to nations like Poland and Sweden, these nations are part of NATO. And NATO has whatever clause in the treaty, right? That an attack on one member of NATO is an attack on all members of NATO. And if one nation is attacked, that's a member of NATO, all other nations that are members of NATO need to come to its rescue and fight the aggressor. So if Russia initiates a conflict with Poland, for example, well, that would be stupid because now you're fighting directly with NATO. And that won't end the way the Ukraine conflict is going to end. And it makes no sense for Russia to do that. Makes no sense. Because now you're going to have the full might of NATO directly against you. The Ukraine conflict is a proxy conflict. It is Ukrainians dying for NATO. But now Poland, and see, the West is the past few years, they've been transforming Poland into a major military power. Poland now is has the most powerful military in Europe, in Western Europe, even more powerful than Germany. There's a reason why this has been done. Let's take a look at the map, okay? If you see the map, what do you have west of Ukraine and Belarus? You have Poland. So Poland is the next frontier. So the West is worried that if Russia, for whatever reason, takes over Ukraine, and Belarus is already kind of, an ally of Russia, then they could try to make a move on Eastern Europe. And all these nations used to be part of the Warsaw Pact: Poland, Czech Republic, Slovakia, Hungary, and so on. So that's why they are transforming Poland into a major military power. And it would be, I would say, not very wise of Russia to start a conflict with Poland. I mean, what do you get? What does Russia get from a conflict with Poland? What's the point of unending war? A war, a military conflict, makes sense if it has clear political and military objectives that are in line with your national interest. Now, is a war with Poland, Sweden, whatever, is it in line with Russia's national interest? What are the military objectives? What are the political objectives? I'm not quite sure. So it doesn't make sense. Struggler says, what do you think about Trump and Bill Clinton? Donnie and Bubba? I don't think about those two in that sense. I, yeah. What can I say? This is not the forum to discuss that. I discuss these things on Twitter. looks like it's looks like the rumors are true. Good God. I don't know what sort of nation the United States is, really. I don't get their culture. Yikes. James, my good friend James is back. China called our land Tianzhu, meaning heavenly. James, what land are you from? Are you Indian? The Chinese called India heavenly. Tianzhu means the center of heaven or heavenly abode or whatever, right? So, yeah. So the Chinese, when referring to India, called it Tianzhu during the Tang dynasty era. Heavenly. That is indeed true. Yeah. But that's India, not the UK, not England, India. Nick Dreams says the US is betting big on AI. What will be the geopolitical implications if it turns out to be a bad bet or a bet that takes a decade to pay off? We've had similar things, big data, climate change, etc. Climate change was a passing fad. It's indeed a thing. Climate change is indeed a reality, no question about that. But there was a tremendous amount of focus on climate change, and now it's not there. Big data. There was a lot of hype about big data. Was that hype justified? Of course, it was justified. Now, big data is no longer a buzzword that is in vogue, but big data is the foundation of artificial intelligence. Without big data, there is no AI. Yes, the US is betting big on AI. Why is China betting so big on AI? Can AI be a bad bet? Absolutely not. AI is a transformative technology. 1,000 years from today, historians will write about the pre-AI era and the post-AI era. And we see, for us, what do we see? What kind of AI are we aware of? Chat GPT. And what recently, Gemini something has come out. And there is Claude. And there is the Chinese, whatever the names are, right? We know ChatGPT is the most famous. So most people are aware of, that you can chat with ChatGPT, ask questions, and it tells you of stuff. And yeah, nice. That's not the only thing AI is. There are different AIs that you are not aware of. There are military AIs. What will a military AI do? It's gonna decide for you what is the best strategy in a complicated geopolitical situation. Let's say, or in a complicated war situation, what is the best strategy to use in real time that will outsmart your enemy? It can do game theory in real time. You see, game theory is nice when you're doing the prisoner's dilemma and whatnot. You can calculate those situations easily, reasonably easily. You can do a Nash equilibrium and whatnot. But when it comes to complex situations with so many different factors, you need a very high intelligence to do the game theoretical calculations and give you the dominant strategies. So AI can do that. So AI is not going to be a bad bet. There's an AI arms race going on, and whichever nation comes out on top is gonna rule the world for the next 1,000 years potentially. How do we decide who has won? The nation that achieves AGI and ASI first is the winner. Once you reach there, you will simply outpace everybody else, and you will prevent the others from catching up with you. So AI is not going to be a bad bet, and it's not going to take a decade to pay off. It's paying off right now, but you're not aware of it. That's the point. You're not supposed to know these things. These things happen behind closed doors. There are AI systems you can't imagine that are currently in existence. Okay. General Dwayne says, how in South Korea the people are detached from culture? Look, I have answered this question multiple times, and it's not a geopolitical question, sir. Please, let's discuss geopolitics today. All right. I took this question just a couple of live streams ago in detail. So you can check out maybe episode 30, either 306 or 304. Biju says, do you think the Japanese or German public deep inside know that their country is a vassal state? Some of them are aware of it. Some of them who are still able to think critically will be aware of it, right? But most people in any nation, they just go with the flow. See, what do people want in life? First of all, ask yourself this: what do people want in life? Firstly, people are the same everywhere. Now you'll say, what do I mean by that? Human beings are the same no matter which country you go to. Whether you go to African nations, Asian nations, subcontinent of India, Europe, East Europe, Western Europe, North Africa, North America, South America, wherever you go in the world, people are the same. Now, what do I mean by that? Everybody wants the same things. They want a nice, comfortable life. They want a decent income. They want decent living standards. They want a good future for their children. That's what everybody wants in every country. Okay. Now, if you look at the state of the conditions in Germany and Japan, these are both first world nations. These are the two nations that were the major, you could say, losers in the Second World War, right? Both were devastated. Then the Americans helped these two nations rise back on their feet, gave them first world status and standards, allowed them to reach those standards, allowed those economies to become robust again, right? But kept the nations enslaved because they are worried about these nations. So the situation is that the ordinary people have good living standards, way better than in India. They have comfort. They have things that you would call luxuries in India. They have high incomes. They have a well, forget about Germany now, but they had a peaceful law and order and whatnot. Maybe not the case in Germany anymore because of the immigration thing, but whatever. The rule of law, all of those things. So as long as you have all those things, you will not complain too much, right? And you have elections that happen on a regular basis. And then you have the education system that tells you that your country was evil and the Americans are the benevolent or benevolent oppressors, no, benevolent friends of ours. So you are in this nice cozy cocoon. So most people will be happy believing all that. And when somebody points out some, you know facts that go contrary to what you believe, it makes you very uncomfortable. You want to not think too much. You can just put labels on those people. You are conspiracy theorists, blah blah blah, all that stuff. So most people don't know about this. Most people don't care about this, but there'll be some people who are aware. I mean, recently, somebody pointed out last week to me that there was some Japanese politician in parliament who said that Japan is a colony of the US, a vassal of the US. So I did happen to eventually see that video clip, and yeah, that person was an MP in Japan who was pointing out that Japan is a colony of the US. And then the Japanese Prime Minister stands up and she says that no, Japan is a sovereign nation. Well, we all know that's a convenient fiction, isn't it? WBR says, do you know about the Clinton Lewinsky scandal? You see, like I said, I am not a news surfer. That happened 20, 30 years ago. How many years? Of course, I know about it. What's the point? What does it have to do with geopolitics? Come on, man. This was all over I mean, everyone knows about that. Bhaskar Bandit says Poland's demographics have not been re-engineered so much yet, unlike other parts of the EU. Is it because they agreed to pump their military-industrial complex against the fake Russia is coming threat? Potentially. So there are two nations in, you could say, US-controlled Europe that have refused to allow these immigrants into their nation. One is Poland, the other is Hungary. And both nations have to pay fines to the dictatorship in Brussels because they don't want the immigrants. I think the fines are like several $1 million per day or something, but they are willing to pay it. So why is this being tolerated? First of all, if you pay the fine, what can they do about it, right? It's the price of freedom, I suppose. And maybe there's some kind of tacit understanding that we don't change our demographics and we allow you to bulk up our military industrial complex and to turn Poland into a fortress against Russia. Maybe there could be that sort of understanding, but obviously none of that is known in the public domain, naturally. Ankita Ji says, your opinion on the US boycotting the G20 summit or alleged persecution of whites in South Africa. Secondly, South Africa proceeding with declaration without US nod. What do you think a really bold step? Wow. Okay. So, like I said, um, I've not really studied what's happening in the G20 summit right now. I'll do that in my own sweet time in a week or so. But okay, so the US has boycotted the G20 summit. I remember Trump a few months ago was putting out these videos on X and his social media. What is it, Truth Social or something? Uh, Videos about whites being persecuted in South Africa. There's a white genocide happening allegedly in South Africa. That's what he was claiming. And Elon Musk was in agreement with Donald Trump. So is that why the US has boycotted the G20 summit? Has the US boycotted it? I know that Trump hasn't gone, but is there no US presence at all? So I am not aware of this. The G20 summit is something that's happening right now, or it may just have ended. I don't surf the news. I don't try to keep track of the latest information in real time. I take my time to see what's happening. So I'm not sure what the deal is. But in case the US has boycotted the G20 summit, like clearly it has, okay, makes no difference. The US will continue to rule the world the way it does, and whether it participates in the G20 summit or not makes no real difference in the outcomes in the world, right? The Trump is happy playing his game of tariffs. He is trying to achieve a certain outcome in the Ukraine conflict, a ceasefire. As per his proposal, he's trying to counterbalance China. He's trying to encircle India, and so on. All that is going on, and G20 summit makes no difference actually for him. So it's okay. It's not important for him. Maybe the G7 is more important for the US than the G20. So yeah, if that's the case, then it makes no difference to the US whether they participate or not. And South Africa proceeding with a declaration without US nod. What do you think? A really bold step? Um, Look, a declaration is a bunch of words, right? Who cares about declarations? I have always emphasized the difference between words and actions. You may put out declarations or whatever. At the end of the day, they are symbolic. It's words. Do you know how these things are drafted? A bunch of diplomats and bureaucrats come together from various countries, and then they have intense negotiations, all night negotiations about what words to use in which order to use them. That goes on for multiple days. And at the end of the day, there's a great consensus. Yes, we have done it. We have found the right order of words. I have seen these G20 declarations. It's a bunch of words, right? It has no real massive outcome on the shape of the world, on the shape of history. It's okay, no big deal. So if the South Africans have proceeded with a declaration without the US nod, then it's not a really bold step. The US also doesn't really care. They won't really punish South Africa for it. They will punish South Africa if South Africa takes some actions that are counter to American interests. Actions. Let's say that South Africans allow Russian mining companies in South Africa. Now, that's something that crosses red lines. Let's say South Africa allows certain Chinese activities in South Africa that cross perceived US red lines. That sort of stuff will invite retaliation. A declaration, a bunch of words, no one cares. Kiran More says ISRO scientists are building Atomisus AI. Oh, let's find out. I thought in ISRO you had engineers, right? ISRO is an engineering organization, rocket engineers. Let's see what this is. ISRO Atomisus AI. What is this? Atomisus AI. India's young innovators to launch Atomisus AI. Next gen India origin intelligence platform built with ISRO something. ISRO level engineering. India, blah, 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 blah. Atomic. Enough. Indian origin. So these engineers have research exposure under ISRO. It's not under ISRO. The development of this Atomisus AI is not under ISRO. It's engineers who have exposure under ISRO. Okay, that's different. Affordable, powerful, sovereign AI alternative, etc. Empower students, creators, families, professionals. One unified ecosystem. Okay, we'll see about that. Too early to pass any judgment. I'll have to see what this AI is. What is it capable of? You see, AIs come in different flavors. Some flavors are not for public consumption. If this is another chatbot kind of model, etc., I mean, it's a good initiative. It's a good step, but you have to take it forward. So I'm glad that people are taking the initiative, but it's not ISRO scientists who are doing it. First of all, it is a bunch of people who have had exposure to ISRO in the past who are building it. And that's great. That's great. But you can't build an AI that is a competitor to ChatGPT or Claude or Gemini or the Chinese systems with small money. You need really large amounts of money to do that. So that's what India needs. India needs to invest billions of dollars worth of money into AI. Um, a bunch of entrepreneurs doing it is a great step, but I hope that if they do a good job of it, they should get more funding to create a proper competitor to the American and Chinese systems. Okay, Teja Reddy says, can you explain about the Gaddafi case in the ICC? I don't remember what it was. That was in the 80s, was it? The Lockerbie bombing? I suppose that was it. There was this, was it a Pan Am aircraft that was blown up over Lockerbie in Ireland? Was it Pan Am? It was blue because I've seen the wreckage when I was a kid in the media, obviously. I didn't go there. Let's see. Lockerbie bombing. Was it Pan Am? Pan Am 103, right? Yeah, my memory serves me right. It was a blue thing. Pan American Airlines no longer exists. And did this eventually lead to a case against Gaddafi in the International Criminal Court? Possibly. And then some Libyan citizens were sanctioned or jailed or whatever. I don't remember the details, but yeah, something like that. It's been a long time, wasn't it? Phantom says, I see a lot of players in the Indian Ocean. What can happen if Indian influence on the Indian Ocean slips off? It'll be bad for India. You see, if you have an erosion of Indian influence in the Indian Ocean, then you will have other players who become dominant actors in the Indian Ocean region. Let's take a look at the map quickly. What is the Indian Ocean region, first of all? So, the Indian Ocean region is the Indian subcontinent. It is the west coast of the Sea of Saurashtra, or the so-called Arabian Sea. And then you have the East Africa coast. You have Madagascar, you have Mauritius and Réunion. Then you have Perth in Australia, where cricket matches last only 2 days, apparently. And then you have Indonesia, right? Sumatra. And then you have the Andaman Sea and the great Kalinga Mahasagar. That's the Indian Ocean region. But the area of our interest is, the Western and Eastern Indian Ocean, which is the so-called Arabian Sea and the so-called Bay of Bengal. So if India's influence, there's an erosion of that over here, then you will have other players becoming major actors over here. Let's say the Chinese Navy becomes a major player here. They can make life difficult for India. We have all kinds of shipments coming in, maritime shipments coming into various ports in India. We have a port in Gujarat, Mundra, is it? It is a major port in Gujarat, Mundra. We also have a port in Mumbai, Nhava Sheva. We have other ports. We have a major port, transshipment port coming up in the Andamans. And all of that, if the Chinese become a dominant maritime player here, they can choke off our shipments. And that becomes a problem for us. Let's say that the Pakistanis suddenly in the next 5 years have more and better submarines than India. And once again, it's a major problem for India. And they can create havoc with our shipping lanes and whatnot. So you can see it's a disaster for India. India has to control this region, which is why we need more ships. We need better ships. We need a diversity of ships. We need distributed lethality of, Not just one kind of ship. You don't want concentrated lethality. You want your lethality to be distributed over a wide area of the ocean. What is lethality? To make a long story short, lethality means missiles, naval missiles. Yeah, naval firepower. So yeah, we need to ensure that our influence does not decline in the Indian Ocean region. We need to augment our influence and our control of the region. Minimalist Maverick says, what's going to happen to Antarctica? What's in the mind of Russia, China, US, India annexing regarding this? I want it to be Indian territory and I want my own house there. Well, you know what? I would love to have a house. One of my holiday homes in Antarctica. I can go there for half an hour every year. Yeah, it's frighteningly cold. What's going to happen to Antarctica? See, everybody wants a piece of Antarctica, and various nations have claims on Antarctica. Would you like to see the claims? Let's take a look at that. Okay, Argentina has a claim. Chile has a claim. Let's take a look at claims, territorial claims on Antarctica. Let's see. The English have a claim. Would you believe it? I suppose even the French would have claims. Argentina, Australia has a claim. Yes, Chile, France, New Zealand has a claim on Antarctica. Norway, who the hell are the Norwegians to claim Antarctic territory? So here we have various claims, which most of them are jokes. I mean, the UK claiming Antarctica is a joke, isn't it? Absolute laughable, risible joke. UK, Norway, who do the Norwegians think they are claiming Antarctica? Australia, I can understand that. France, well, they have territories, in the southern Indian Ocean. New Zealand, well, we could understand they can at least make a nominal claim. Argentina, UK once again, Chile also, right? So that is the deal. Now, you see, most of these nations are in no condition, they're in no position to actually act on these claims. These are all nominal claims, just for namesake. So to play the game of, to pretend to be a big power. The UK claiming Antarctic territory. What kind of a joke is that? In Norway, New Zealand. I mean, no disrespect to these nations, but it is not. It's not going to work out for them, right? If they try to actually act on those claims. So what's going to happen to Antarctica? See, there are several nations that have bases in Antarctica. These bases are typically observatories, research stations, scientific research stations. The Americans have plenty of this. The Chinese have it. India also has at least a couple of Antarctic stations that are typically manned around the year, if I'm not mistaken. Hopefully around the year. I would be disappointed if it's only 6 months a year or whatever. We'll see. The Chinese have that. The Russians have it. So the nations that actually maintain bases on Antarctica, those have to be taken more seriously. Let's take a look at which nations have Antarctic bases, right? Let's see. List of nation. Come on, spelling of nations with Antarctic bases. Let's see how many we have. New Zealand, okay, Australia, Chile, France, Norway, Argentina, Chile again, Germany, nice. Japan, Nihon, good to have you. Ross, okay, let's see. That's nonsense. Research stations in Antarctica. How many? Do we have a list? Okay, US 25%. Argentina, Chile, UK, France, Australia, Russia, Japan, China, Italy, South Africa. India has only 1.89%. So India has a presence there. As always, India is all about slogans and symbolism. We have a couple of stations, yes, but we don't take it seriously. That's how India does everything thus far. I would like that to change. So that's the situation. If there is, I think there's a treaty that says that Antarctica has to remain neutral territory, and no nation can actually seek to occupy it. And these treaties, well, they will continue to exist as long as the current world order exists. If there is a major upheaval in the world order, well, some nations may make a move on Antarctica, those that can. So what's going to happen, we'll see about that. Thus far, it is neutral territory. Abhinav Kulkarni says, Abhijit, Pavneet Detailed Geopolitics podcast. Well, okay, thank you for the suggestion. I am not really doing podcasts that much anymore. Very rarely, very infrequently. So we'll see. But anyway, thank you for the suggestion, sir. Dhruv Bhatnagar, well, thank you very much. Thank you. WBR says, is Mongolia a safeguard for Russia against China? Groups like the Buryats, Yakuts, Tuvans, etc. are getting militarized due to war. Which war? It's a war? Where is it? Ukraine war? So is it a problem for China if it decided to go in? You see, yeah, that's a good question. We'll go to the map. Ask yourself a question. Okay, very pragmatic geopolitical question. Why does Mongolia still exist? You see, there's a story, right? When Stalin was shown a map of India, when Joseph Stalin was shown a map of the Indian subcontinent, he asked, "What is this little island to the south of India?" And the Indian ambassador said, "Sir, you see, this is Sri Lanka. It is a separate nation." And Stalin said, "Why is it a separate nation? If you are a great power, why don't you take it? Why is it a separate nation? Why is it independent?" The Indian ambassador had no answer to that. So why is Mongolia, which is sandwiched between massive Russia and massive China, why is it independent? It is independent because it's a buffer state. It was once the greatest empire in human history. Today, it is unfortunately and sadly a nation that's almost powerless. Doesn't have a great military, and you see, it's not geopolitically relevant except as a buffer state between Russia and China. About half of Mongolia is occupied by China. The Chinese call it Southern Mongolia, and it's under Chinese occupation. And there is a part of Mongolia that's north of present-day Mongolia that has been incorporated into Russian territory. So historically, Mongolia was much larger. Now it's been bites have been taken out of it, and whatever is left is a buffer state. It's still massive. So why does it exist in the shape and form that it does? Because the Chinese and the Russians need something between them. If they have a much longer border, there is a much higher likelihood of Russia and China going to war. So it's better to have a buffer state between them, a nation that can't threaten anybody, and you allow it to exist. And I can go into the history of Mongolia and what happened during the Soviet era, etc. But that's maybe for a different day. Yuvraj Gupta says, Jan 25, you said raising standards session. Did I? Should we have a live stream about how to raise your standards? I suppose we could do that. Yeah, I did kind of say something like that. So what I did was I did all those live streams, right? I did 50 work with me, study with me live streams. That was raising your standards. What was the purpose of those 50 live streams I did? I'll show you once again. So the past 2-3 months, I've stopped that now, but the past 2-3 months, I did those live streams, which are no longer visible. One second. I'd opened this for a second. Latest, let's see. Are those live streams visible anymore? I think I have unlisted those, but you will find those live streams over here. If I open up the playlists, one second. So I'm not sure. It will be somewhere there. The point is, why did I have those live streams? That was how to raise your standards. See, if you want to achieve something big, you have to spend a lot of time working on it, right? And that was the purpose of those live streams. So that was kind of what I did. 8 hour sessions of me writing. So the objective was to demonstrate that to achieve something, to create something, you have to spend a lot of time and effort doing that. So that was kind of along the lines of raising your standards. But I could perhaps do a live stream specifically dedicated to how to raise your standards. We'll see about that. The Krish is a new member. Well, welcome, sir. Let us welcome the Krish to the channel's membership. Thank you very much for becoming a member. I really appreciate that. Okay. Biju Saikia says, what do you think about the BRI project? How is it going and when will it be successful? The BRI project has been on for a very long time, hasn't it? The Belt and Road Initiative of China. What was the objective of the BRI project? The objective of the BRI project was to create a massive amount of infrastructure in Eurasia that would connect China with the rest of the Eurasian nations, and it would allow China to export its goods to all the Eurasian nations, and that sort of thing. So if you control the infrastructure of industry, if you control the infrastructure of commerce, then you control much of the economy of the region, right? And you get ready access to all kinds of resources, maybe raw materials and all that. So that is the purpose of the BRI project. It's to increase Chinese influence and power across Eurasia. They have a complementary project called the Maritime Silk Road, which seeks to create maritime trade routes and shipping lanes between China and various nations, including African nations, to extract natural resources from those nations. And obviously, the objective of all of this is to increase China's power. Now, what do I think about it? It's a great initiative. Uh, it shows that China is an ambitious nation. It's a nation with a specific, very, very clear vision for the future. And it shows China has great leadership. But how has this gone thus far? It's not worked out very well for China. Many nations have stopped participating in the BRI. And if you look at the the Pakistan portion of the BRI, the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, it's not really worked out at all, right? It's not paid off the way the Chinese wanted it to pay off, and so on. So it's not gone very well for China. That's the problem that the Chinese have faced thus far. Krishai EXE says, how can soft power of a nation affect geopolitics? So this is not a criticism of you, Krishai EXE, but what I have consistently observed is that Indians are obsessed with soft power. Soft power, soft power. Okay, I'm not trying to criticize you. I'm just putting forth an observation of not you specifically. It's a pattern that you see across all Indians, or most Indians, that we are obsessed with soft power. I'll tell you what is the relevance of soft power in geopolitics. Minimal. Soft power is useless without hard power. If you don't have hard power but you have soft power, it gives you nothing whatsoever in geopolitics. But if you have hard power, then soft power can sometimes augment it. Sometimes you can get things done through soft power if you have hard power. So if I have a big stick, but I talk to you nicely, sir, let's sit together, let's work it out. I need these things from you. Would you be so kind as to give it to me? Then maybe you will give it to me. So I'm not using hard power here to convince you or to bully you. I'm talking to you nicely and I'm convincing you through my good behavior. That is soft power. But if I did not have that stick behind my back or at my disposal, then you would not listen to me, right? So that's how it works. Soft power is useless and pointless without hard power to back it up. Right Angle says, please tell other delusions of people of Bharat live. Well, we can discuss that in a different live stream. Today we're going to discuss geopolitics, not delusions of people of Bharat, which there are plenty of course. So yeah, even yesterday somebody had reminded me about that. So maybe I can perhaps do another video about that. Yeah. So maybe I will take a screenshot of this comment, and maybe in a future live stream I can discuss a few more delusions of the people of Bharat. Sure. Om Sushant Bharadwaj says, a life is measured in what we give, not take. Let time flow through you to others. Well, okay, that's not a question, but it's a statement, and I agree with you. Well, it's up to you. You can measure your life in whichever way you want, but I think this is a good way of measuring life. What is the purpose of life is what many people ask, right? What's the purpose of life? So you can decide what the purpose of your life is. But for me, I would say my life has been a good life if I am able to contribute more to society than I take from society. I think that would be a life well lived. So yeah, that kind of echoes what you're saying here. So yes, I agree with you. Karan, well, Karan has no question, but thank you so much, Karan. Really appreciate it. Thank you, sir. Animesh Paul says, today is my birthday. Well, first of all, Animesh, happy birthday to you, and wish you many, many happy returns of this fantastic day for you. I'm a tech worker doing well in life. I'm deeply grateful for what I have, knowing not everyone has this privilege. How can I become a better person with higher standards? Okay, so this is not geopolitics, but since it's your birthday, I'll answer in brief. How can you become a better person with higher standards? Don't compromise. Don't lie to yourself. All of us, in some way or the other, we kind of lie to ourselves, right? We make some promises to ourselves, and then we break those promises. And what is a compromise? It's breaking the promises you make to yourself. You know what you're capable of, what you're capable of. You know what you want to achieve in life. Maybe you have some dreams, some hopes, some aspirations. And if you compromise on those things by settling for an easier life, or maybe settling because of whatever reasons, then you're compromising, and that you're lowering your standards. So you have to be uncompromising. It's very, very hard. It's very easy to say these things. It's very hard to do that in real life. But only the hard things make you better, right? So and sometimes you have to compromise. There are certain times when you don't have the resources at your disposal to achieve what you want to achieve. So maybe you delay what you want to achieve, but you don't postpone it forever, right? So that's the kind of thing it is. I mean, I can go on about this in detail, but the main thing is, don't lie to yourself. Whatever promises you make to yourself, you keep those promises to yourself. Otherwise, you will lose your own self-respect. And don't compromise with whatever your core goals and objectives are. Don't become people pleaser. That is also one sign of lowering standards. Okay, so these are some of the things. All the best, Animesh, and once again, happy birthday to you. Bhuvan says, why no government action on anti-Indian online racism? Well, the government of India can only act within the geographical confines of India. India's sovereignty is within its geographical confines, right? Now, when there is some activity coming from outside of India, what can India do about it? Can the government of India take action against people legally? Can the government of India legally take action against somebody who is in a different country? What can we do? We could perhaps request the government of that country to do something. But if it's a democratic country, then the government of that country will say that these are people who are exercising their rights as per the law of our country. And in our country, we have freedom of speech. So they will say whatever they want to say. We can't do anything about it. We are friends of yours, but we can't control all our people. Then what do you do about it? The real reason this is a problem for us is because we don't control the platforms on which there is anti-India online racism. All these social media platforms. We don't control them. We don't own them. We didn't build them because we have been sitting doing something else. We have never bothered to build our own platforms that are as good or even better than what the West has built. We don't have that ambition, right? That's the problem. So, what can the government do about it? Well, the government, see, you can't ask the government to build a Twitter or a Facebook. Private entrepreneurs have to do that. And there are people with these ideas, but who will fund them? It's high risk, right? India, we don't want risk. We don't want risk. We don't like risk over here. There is a very low appetite for risk in India. Very low risk tolerance threshold we have. We want guaranteed returns. So that's why you see, if you go to Silicon Valley, there's a very high appetite for risk. Angel investors, they typically spread their bets on, let's say, 20 companies. And even if 2 of those bets turn out to be good, they're going to make their money back. But that mindset doesn't exist in India. We have venture capital in India and all, but their mindset is different. So that's where we are. Any solutions as current to pollution problem pan India? Well, that's a long, big topic. I can't answer that in detail. What's the solution? One solution is we go all in on nuclear power. See, right now, a lot of the electricity we generate is through coal-based power plants. We have to burn coal for that, right? And if we could move to nuclear, then that could reduce some of the pollution. And there are so many other things. We could move to electric vehicles then. Because see, if you move to electric vehicles completely, but your electricity still comes from fossil fuels, then it's not going to end the pollution. So there is that. There are many other factors which we can think of. NK says, who is more powerful, Prime Minister or Supreme Court of India? This is not a geopolitical question, sir. This is a question about the internal matters of India, which I don't discuss. See, I can't fight every battle. I can't talk about everything. I speak about three very broad topics: geopolitics, history, and science. I will not discuss Indian politics. I will not discuss these internal matters of India. That is not my battlefield. So no comments. No comments. Sorry. DRC, thank you, sir or ma'am. The question is Anglo is the Anglo-Saxon Empire trying to alter Indian history, anthropology, and epistemology using state-sanctioned racism? What about never do an enemy a small injury by Machiavelli? Is the Anglo-Saxon Empire trying to alter? See, what they're trying to do, what they're not trying to do it, they have been doing it for the past couple of centuries. They have set the narrative about India, about India's past, about India's society, about India's culture. They have told you all and the world that there is a very evil caste system in India. Four castes. They instituted those castes, right? They made it part of the Indian legal system, the Indian governance system. And after 1947, so the point is, they have written our history for us, and we teach that to our students. They have set the narrative about everything that is to do with India, about India's history, about India's culture, like I said, everything. And now we also have racism that's coming out from various places. Now, one interesting thing that's happened in the past couple of days on X or Twitter is that every account now shows the country of origin. So you'll see a lot of these anti-India accounts. If you look at the country of origin, it'll show South Asia. So you can choose to show your country or your geographical region. And obviously, Twitter is an American company, so they will show these. They'll say South Asia, not Indian subcontinent. So when an account, you find it to be South Asia based, and it is spewing hate against Indians, it is guaranteed to be either Pakistanis or Bangladeshis. Could be some other countries, but mainly Pakistanis and Bangladeshis. So there are a lot of accounts like these. And those obviously are in line with, you could say, the Anglo-Saxon agenda, right? And you have all these bot farms and what that have been creating and amplifying narratives against India in the past, since the year 2022, mostly. Even before that, it was there, but now it's coordinated. So they are not trying to alter Indian history. They have set the narrative of Indian history. They have set the standards of Indian history. They have decided which dates what happened. They have decided what was the date of the birth of the Buddha, which year Kanishka ruled the Mauryan Empire. We don't even know if those dates are correct. There were multiple Chandraguptas in Indian history. When Megasthenes writes that I was at the court of Sandrakottos in Palibotra, he's talking about a king called Chandragupta in Patliputra. But which Chandragupta? There have been multiple Chandraguptas in our history. So what if the Mauryan Chandragupta Maurya was way before Alexander? Yeah. That would place the date of Chanakya also several centuries before. It would change the date of the birth of Gautam Buddha. So all of this has been decided by the West, and we simply slavishly, blindly follow that. A lot of this needs to be looked into. And yeah, so by controlling what you think of your history, they control your minds, and that's how they can control the entire country, the entire culture. Very powerful. Rohan Suneja says, how Scandinavia became so rich, historically poor. How did Scandinavia become so rich? Historically, it was poor. Interesting question. How did Scandinavia become so rich? I'm not sure I can answer the question right now. Can't think of the historical context in great detail. I will have to revisit this question. Interesting question, but I haven't really studied the historical, the flow of history. Scandinavia, very interesting region, but interesting only in recent times. Historically, like you're right. It was not really very prosperous. Yeah, I'm not sure I can answer this question right now, but interesting question. Maybe in the future I can take it up. Krishna EX says, who really won the Cold War? The United States won the Cold War. The United States. James says European people built all positive aspects of the modern world due to their intelligence, culture, and bravery. Our knowledge is far more superior. I'm tired of pretending. You have lived there, right? Yes, my dear friend James, I have indeed lived in the West on several occasions. European people, fantastic people, no question. Fantastic intelligence, culture, bravery, uh, knowledge, very superior. I'll tell you what the Europeans did was they excelled, they outperformed the rest of the world in the systematic application of organized violence. Okay, that's what the Westerners did. And who excelled among the Westerners? It was the English who excelled at the organized and systematic application of large scale organized violence. They excelled it. They mastered this. The English are a race of merchants who have guns, and their objective is to extract the maximum profits out of any endeavor. That's what the English are. And in the past 500 years, they destroyed the world, plundered the world, and amassed all the wealth they could, and kept the world and impoverished the world, the rest of the world, and kept it impoverished. And then constructed this global rules-based world order in which they set the rules, the others follow the rules, and then they set the narratives, and then they wrote the history of the world. That's how you claim that you are that the West is superior. You see, let's look at this from a different perspective, a perspective that's different from anything I've said before. Okay, hear me. Let me put out a completely different perspective from anything I have said before. This is the age of Kali. This is the Kali Yuga. If you win in Kali Yuga, it doesn't mean you're better. It means you're evil. Right? So, victory in Kali Yuga means you are on the side of the evil forces. And that's what's happened, but we're going to retake the world sooner or later. Anyway, James, I do appreciate you very much. I do. Biju Saikia says, are we going through the fourth industrial revolution? How long will it last? How can we take advantage of it? Okay, which industrial revolution is this? You had the industrial revolution in the 17th, 18th centuries. Then you had, I don't know which industrial revolution this is. I'm a little muddy on the history, in the chronology of which was which. Okay, but we are going through a massive transformation. It's a transformative period of human history because of the technologies that have emerged, right? Artificial intelligence. How long will it last? How can we take advantage of it? This could last 1,000 years. AI could transform the world, and whoever wins the AI race, the race for AGI and ASI, could rule the world for 1,000 years if they don't get it wrong catastrophically. So, yeah, the next couple of decades are going to be transformative. We're going to have the rise of very, very powerful AI systems. And we're also seeing transformative leaps, quantum leaps in robotics technology. So you marry the two, artificial general intelligence or super intelligence with cutting edge robotics, you're going to have a Terminator-like situation. And whoever is able to merge these two technologies, either the US or China, India is not a player. So sadly, right now, I hope it changes, but India is not a player right now. So whoever wins this race is going to rule the world for a very long time. How long could it last? Like I said, it could last 1,000 years, at least like a century or two minimum. It's going to be the start of a new imperial era. Whoever wins this race, it's going to start a new imperial era, a new imperial cycle. An imperial cycle is roughly 2.5 centuries. That's what history tells us. So how can we take advantage of it? By participating in the goddamn race. India needs to participate. Is India a player in robotics right now? No. Is India a player in AI right now? No, sir, not at all, sir. What the hell are we doing? How can we take advantage of it? By participating, by becoming a major player. We are not a... Okay, anyway. UMX says Hungary minister says we will pay no tax for illegals. Thoughts? Yeah, that's been their policy for a very long time, for years. I would say kudos for having a spine. Yeah. Galliwer says, did you just 1984 eyes Germany and Poland? I guess you're right, Orwellian in spirit, at least spineless or not. But I hope that they don't sell that commodity which Faust did. Did I 1984 eyes Germany and Poland? Big Brother. Orwell, right? Orwellian in spirit. Well, Orwell was kind of a visionary, wasn't he? He kind of saw the direction in which the world could go, and it's kind of gone like that. If you look at the European Union, you have a big brother sitting in Brussels who controls what happens, who decides what happens, and the people don't have the agency to change that anymore. If you are a citizen of Italy, if you're a citizen of Germany, if you're a citizen in non-occupied Ireland, and you don't want certain things in your country, you are powerless to do anything about it. You don't have the agency. All you can do is obey. Otherwise, you're gonna face consequences. So yeah, that's what's happening. Germany, Poland, not so much. Poland at least has control over immigration. It's not allowing any weird immigrants into its across its borders, which is a good thing. So yeah, that's the situation in Germany. Yeah, what is that commodity that Faust sold? I can't quite recall. Let's Faust. Yeah, Faust. Of course, Faust was. What is the commodity that he sold? I can't remember right now. It's been a while. Okay, selling your selling your soul to El Diabolo. Maybe that. Okay, Deva says, Namaste, will debasement trade accelerate in 26? I don't know. I'm really sorry. Can't say. I'm not keeping track of any of this. Sorry. Amisha says, when will the black hole and Maya chapter come next? Long time. Yeah, it's been a while, isn't it? See, the Mirrors of Maya series, it's not easy to write. You have to come up with a new story, completely fresh story each time. It's not something that I can write one chapter a week. It's a new story each time. It's a new short story each time. I need a completely different character, and I have to think about a really interesting story. So that's difficult. It will not come. Sometimes you may have a couple of releases in a month, maybe sometimes once in 3 months. I can't say for sure. Black holes. I'm wondering what to do about the black hole series right now. Obviously, I'm continuing it. I'm working on that. But should I continue to release each chapter as a standalone ebook, or should I, now that I've released three, I think three, right? Should I then now just complete the book and release it at one go? I have to think about that. So I'm still in the process of deciding which way to release it. Should I release it all at the end in the form of a proper physical and ebook, or should I continue doing it one step at a time? Let me decide and I'll get back to you all. But thank you for reminding me, Amisha ji. Suresh is a new member. Well, thank you very much, Suresh ji. I really appreciate you becoming a member, and I welcome you to the channel. Thank you so much. I appreciate your support, sir. WBR says, was Magnificent Nehru comparable to Clinton or Trump? Well, well, certain aspects were similarly magnificent. Certain aspects of Shri Nehruji's personality, of his multifaceted personality, were potentially reminiscent of Shri Bill Clinton ji or Shri Donald Trump ji. Certain aspects. You see, Mr. Nehru was a very, very charismatic person. He was very popular, apparently, with the ladies. So these aspects seem to be kind of comparable. Apart from that, I don't know. Okay. Om Sushant Bharadwaj says, I pulled that code of life and time from your book. Honestly, it's a great read. Okay. Yeah. So that's why it echoed what I said. Well, thank you very much for pointing that out. And I once again Completely agree with what you said. Thank you, Ji. Lakshman Tahiliani says, how much time does India have to sort Pakistan out? Yeah. How much time does India have to sort Pakistan out? That's a good question. 6 months, 1 year. The longer we take to sort them out, the more of a price we may have to pay. I would say 6 months to 1 year. Maximum 3 years. I would say 3 years is too late. That's why I said earlier in this episode, right? I foresee a war between India and Pakistan in the next 1 to 3 years. I would say 6 months to 1 year we have to sort them out, otherwise it will be too late. Galuvar says, Om Sushant Bharadwaj, I think quoted Nityanand's DIL. Okay, I'm not sure. This is a conversation with somebody else. All right, okay. Okay, it's to me, is it? Okay, I'm a little confused. What is this a question to me? I think quoted Nityanand's DIL. What's a DIL? Yeah, I'm not sure what you're saying here, but no questions like you said. Okay, no problem. Thank you. Satellite. I'm not sure what that means, but okay. Satellite says, next, ask me anything live stream. I have some questions. Maybe I should do a generic ask me anything live stream in which I take questions about anything. Sure, I can do that. How about next weekend I do an Ask Me Abhijit live stream, which will be a general live stream, not specifically geopolitics. Sure. Okay, done. This coming Sunday, let me make a mental note of that. This coming Sunday, it will be a freestyle live stream, no specific topic. All right, I'll do that. Thank you for the suggestion. Kirtan Gupta doesn't have a question. No problem, sir. Thank you very much for your contribution. Thank you, sir. The Scrummer says, why don't we fence all our borders? Well, the problem with fencing all our borders is that you can't fence borders that are like 7 kilometers high, right? Or 5 kilometers high, across mountainous terrain, glaciers, ice. Sometimes you have borders in very hilly regions, up and down, forests and waterfalls and whatnot. How do you fence that? Sometimes you can't. If you go to the Himalayas, if you go there physically and you see the situation there, see the kind of mountains we have, you'll understand it's not possible to fence the borders there. So there are practical reasons why it's not possible always to fence all the borders. As far as possible, we should. SK1 says namaste. Namaste, and thank you very much for your contribution. Thank you so much. James says there is more racism in India than there is in the EU. You see, I'm not sure if it's more or less, but there's no question about the fact that there is racism in every nation. It is there. It's a fact of life. There is some amount of racism in every nation. It is what it is. It's human nature. Can't do anything about it. But I'm not sure about India having more racism than the EU. I'm not sure about that, James. Not sure about that. Have you been to the EU? You were. The UK was a member of the EU, wasn't it, before Brexit happened? Brexit. The Europeans are pretty racist. I know that for a fact. Depending on which nation you're in. Certain nations are super racist. So I would say Indians are way less racist actually than the average European. I would say the average Indian is significantly less racist than the average European. That is something I can say from first-hand experience. Indeg 3,000 kilograms of rare earth magnets enough for ISRO. What is the Indeg? Not sure what the question is. 3,000 kilograms of rare earth magnets, is it enough? Indigenous, is it enough for ISRO? I'm not sure. If you're asking if 3,000 kilograms of indigenous rare earth magnets, is it enough for ISRO? I'm not sure, because I'm not sure how ISRO is using rare earths or neodymium magnets or whatever it is. For what purpose? I'm not sure. I can't answer the question, right? Shivarali says, how did we evolve from apes? Well, not sure how it is connected to geopolitics, but we evolved through natural selection. We evolved through the need to survive. And evolution doesn't happen over 2 weeks, right? It happens over hundreds of thousands of years. So it happened over time. The environmental factors and the pressures of natural selection and the survival of the fittest, all these pressures and the changing environment of the earth and the evolving threat scenarios for humans, all of these things, they shaped our evolution, and that's how it happened. Om Sushant Bhardwaj says it is all related to the book Borrowed Time, the first book of the Mirrors of Maya. Got it. Thank you once again. All right, that brings me to the end of the live stream. I've taken, I suppose, all the questions. Okay, there's one more question from the super chat. Your opinion of EU, of the European Union, is similar to Eva Vladingerbroek. Who is Eva Vladingerbroek? I'm not sure who this lady is, but okay, I'll check out who this person is and what I think it's a she, what her opinions are. I'll check it out. All right, thank you very much for letting me know. And that brings me to the end of the super chats. Yeah, we have almost reached 2.5 hours, so I think it's a good time to end. But let me take one final question by Ayush. We are getting a subtle hint. Are we getting subtle hints of a nuclear Japan? I earlier made a video on this before. What's my opinion? How will it change the geopolitical equation in East Asia? I think you could have a nuclear Japan in the next 2 to 3 years. It would be in line with what I said in the earlier video. It would also be in line with what Henry Kissinger had predicted in the year 2022 or 2023, that you will have a nuclear armed Japan in the next 5 years. So if that happens, it will be a significant setback for China. And I'm sure the Chinese will throw a big tantrum, but what can they do about it? So it will significantly change the geopolitical balance of power in East Asia. See, Japan is a shadow nuclear power. It has the technology. It has the technological know-how. If Japan wants, if it is given the go-ahead by the United States, it can have indigenous nuclear weapons next week. And high-quality nuclear weapons. Japan is one of the most technologically advanced nations in the world. So they can have it anytime they're allowed to. If this happens, then this will significantly alter the balance of power in East Asia. And I see that happening in the next 2 to 3 years, perhaps even sooner. Yeah. And there's one more super chat, so let's take this. Assam government using its special power 1950 Act that allows Assam to expel Bangladeshis without any court or tribunal. Some are now shouting human rights, but what about mine? Why are you inside my house in the first place? What's my opinion? Okay, I'm not aware of this 1950 Act or whatever it is, but if Assam is now preparing to expel illegal Bangladeshi infiltrators, I would very much welcome that step. Right? Anybody who is inside India illegally has to be deported, expelled from India. As simple as that. India is not a dharamshala like they say. Right? Only Indian citizens have the right to live in India. If the Bangladeshis have a problem in their country, they can change their country for the better. This is not their land. We have created a separate nation for them. They should be sent back there. So if this is happening, I will be very pleased about it. All right, people, let me now end the live stream. And we have now crossed 2 hours, 30 minutes. All right, people, thank you so much for all the questions. It was really fun. I think that we had some very interesting and nice questions today. And let's continue this in the future live stream. So next weekend, next Sunday, I will do an Ask Me Abhijit live stream in which I will take questions about any topic, not only geopolitics. Okay, and we shall do that. And okay, we have some more questions. One last question. VS says, I have actually met someone named Mohammed Vishnu. Indonesian, right? The Indonesians have the most fantastic names. They have refused to give up their Hindu identity, their pre-Islamic identity, and they have kind of merged that with the new Islamic name. So Mohammed Vishnu is kind of That's the kind of name you can find in Indonesia. I suppose it will offend Muslims as well as Hindus. But yeah, that's Indonesia for you. Fantastic nation. All right, people, thank you so much for the questions. Keep learning, keep asking questions, keep raising your standards, and I shall see you very soon in the next live stream. Take care, everybody. See you soon. Bye bye.